Setting this completely, making it completely its own thing.
Yeah.
So distinctive.
Oh, look, it's nice because George made this completely its own thing in the writing of it. The tone of these stories is obviously so different from Song of Ice and Fire, just because we've shifted perspective, because of where we're starting. We're, ground up in this show, and we've really let that be, the guiding light is just everything goes back to Dunk. How does Dunk feel? We want the audience to come along with this journey, to feel what, when at the opening of the show, when he loses not only his master, but the only father figure he's ever had, and truthfully, the only friend he has in the whole world, probably the only person who even knows he exists, is now gone. It really gives him, an opportunity to set off and to try and do something new. And we've taken that on as our own mantle, as our own charge, to try and do something new, but stay true to this world that everybody loves, and hopefully we'll continue to love as we go forward here.
I'm JJ. I'm with Geek.
Hi.
I wanted to ask, since Duncan is almost like a very micro storytelling versus Song of Ice and Fire functioning on a macro level, so there's a lot of dynamic between Duncan and I call it Mango in Westeros.
Yes.
How do you balance that sort of humor and the slapstick of it, and the vicious nature of Westeros that comes with these journeys? I've seen the first couple of episodes, and there were some parts of it graphic.
Yes, there is. I don't know what you're talking about.
The horse, of course.
Yes. Look, we are the unpolished, gritty version of Westeros. We're not raised in a castle in these beautiful, pristine halls. We're down in the dirt. We're sleeping under trees, and everything that comes along with that. You're shitting under trees sometimes too, and that's just the way it goes. But it's we are smaller, but there's a sort of it's allowed us to be almost stranger than fiction in a lot of ways. I've been using that term a little bit because to me that means that you get the oddities and eccentricities of idiosyncrasies of everybody's own life, of the characters in everybody's own life. Almost feels like you can't ever put that on a screen when you're telling such a big, broad story. And now we get to get right into that. We get to have wonderful characters like Lionel Baratheon, and hopefully, as we move forward, the Red Widow, who are just so strange and wonderful, and really give them their due and give them their time. And all, of course, from Dunk's POV as the novellas are written. But that's the joy of this show, and hopefully people will come with us on that journey.
Almost piggybacking a bit on that, one of my favorite parts of Game of Thrones was always characters on long journeys just having random conversations and almost like hanging out. And there's a lot of that, I've seen in the first 4 episodes. And was that a huge part of what you wanted to kind of explore, just so much of like characters' points of view and how they see the world?
Yes, what was really important, I think, was especially between Dunk and Egg, is building up their relationship as strong as possible as we can in the first half, and then in the second half, when the dynamic changes, we have ourselves a good, solid base of what that relationship is like. Just giving them a chance to hang out, become. There's a mentor-mentee, a knight, squire, father-son, but also just brothers, and friends to a certain extent. And so the more conversations about nothing that you have, the easier that becomes, Obviously, a lot of times it becomes story, and everything to move the story forward just almost becomes a little boring, a little story by numbers. The ability to take a moment and actually live with these people hopefully builds a deeper connection for what we're going to, put you guys through later.
My name is Andrew. I'm with BuzzFeed. So I'd love to hear more about working with George R.R. Martin. What was it like working closely with him? He's such an icon.
Look, it's Ron Condell, gave me some tips on our first meeting because obviously, he and George were such good friends when they met, and that's how Ryan came into this world. And I remember him telling us a story in the House of the Dragon Room that when he landed in Santa Fe for the first time ever, that he got a text from a number they didn't recognize, and it said, "Welcome to the land of enchantment." Well, when I landed in Santa Fe for the first time, I got that text as well, too. And it made me feel just so welcomed into this world of Westeros. It was wonderful. I spent a week there right at the very, very, very beginning of all this before we even knew, if we were going to have a show. I think talking to George for a week and getting his take and his feelings on these characters, and learning just how much he loves this story and, and the Hedge Knight. He made me want to do a good job for him. And he made me want to focus this season. And they say when you're writing that you should not try to please everybody, that you shouldn't write for the audience, that you should pick one person and you should write for them. And this season, season 1, I did that for George, and the fact that he's happy makes me very happy as well too. Hopefully this extends to other people. Hopefully he seems to have a pretty good idea as to how to tell a story that is popular with a wide audience, and so hopefully this will be adopted by everybody else. Season 2, we'll see, who gets picked, but it's he's only been a benefit to this show. He has only been a benefit to me. It's crazy to say, but to think of George R.R. Martin as like your friend now. To be able to have, as you say, conversations with him that are not even about Westeros. He's so interesting to me. Anyways, it's been a delightful experience. So hopefully that continues.
I liked it. I like the show.
Very good. Very good. Excellent.
Can you talk a little bit about the casting process and finding the perfect Duncan egg?
Yeah, well, so look, Dexter was actually, they send you, your casting director sends you big reams of all these auditions, everybody who, they get thousands and thousands, then they distill, and they send you, 10 in a pack, then another 10 in. Cast package, number one on the thing, Dexter Sol Ansell. Clicked on it, watched the audition, and like, perfect, great. So that was easy. And I remember saying to the casting director, we were like, okay, so what do we do? Do we just sign him up? Like, what should we do next? She's like, I think we should, go and we should meet other people and do this. And obviously, yes, we went and we did, months of these processes and chemistry reads and everything. But to come all the way back to him and he was very number one, it just felt like it had to happen. Peter had done some really, really wonderful work on a Sharon Hogan show, and not much else that I could see. But I remember what our casting director said about him is that because he was sort of fresh, he had just obviously come from being a professional rugby player. She said, every single time I see him, he is just exponentially better than last time. And that's sort of what you're betting on to a certain extent when you're searching for people who are unknowns. You just want somebody who you think is going to grow as quickly as you need them to grow. And that was true. I mean, we brought Peter in, 3, 4, 5 times maybe by the end of it. And every single time it became so clear to all of us that it was, that he was our Dunk. And when we saw the two of them together for the final chemistry read, I remember I was sitting there with our director, Owen Harris, and we just looked at each other and we were like, this is the show. It was easy. It was the least stressful casting decisions, we've ever had to make, and hopefully we'll ever have to make.
I experienced the books through Audible. I listened to them, and it seems like it's a very faithful
yes,
adaptation,
of course.
Right? Were there any big departures that just didn't work from the book to page to the screen?
Yeah, well, Egg's voice doesn't sound like Carrie Lloyd, so we decided to stick with that.
That's okay.
Yes, good.
It works.
No, look. The story is the story. It has the beginning, it has the end, and we weren't ever going to change the nature of that. How I have approached this is trying to treat this as if George had written a novel for the Hedge Knight rather than a novella. and just do the scenes that we feel would have naturally filled this out. A little more characterful, a little more world building. You know, we get to obviously meet Lionel Baratheon and, you know, have a good time with him, and a host of other people, and actually just spend a little bit more time with Dunk and Egg. Everything else was just translating Dunk's inner monologue, which is obviously such a big part of it, into something that people could either see or, you know, having him talk to horses, I think, is not only helpful, obviously, because we get out a little bit of that, but it's also, I talk to my dog. You know, I talk to, like, and even worse, I talk to my dog and I talk back from my dog to me when no one is around. You know, there was a version where Dunk was almost doing that with the horse. I was just like, this is too far. Okay, I know, this is too, yeah. And so, you know, the Dunk shitting, good to go all the way back to this, is another wonderful physical manifestation of Dunk's inner anxieties, which are just all throughout. You know, I think he is the most anxious POV character we've had in all of Game of Thrones. And there's a couple other good contenders, you know, but you want to be the hero. You want to go off and you want to do something that's big and hard and challenging, but then all of a sudden your stomach turns on you, you know, and you feel like, okay, you know, that's it. He's not a hero. He's a normal human being, and he's just trying to, you know, take one step forward and do something a little harder than yesterday. So that's it all. We didn't ask anyone to have to put on a performance. We wanted everybody to be themselves in this as much as possible, bring as much as you can through these characters. And so the book just sort of naturally started coming out of their pores.
You mentioned wasps being an issue in sugar blood, I think.
Yeah.
Some of the scenes, like, how else is filming in the night? Is that more challenging than filming in the day? Because everything looks very, you see everything. I was like,
yes. Phew. Yes, good. I'm glad you said, yeah. Yes. Yeah, I mean, look, it's child hours, big deal. Obviously, Egg is in, you know, a lot of it. And shooting child hours at night is probably the most expensive, the most difficult thing that you could possibly do in this world of Westeros. You know, forget VFX dragons. The mud and the rain. Look, we didn't have the budget on this to wait. We just had to go and we had to shoot with what nature was giving us that day, which in Belfast changes quite rapidly. But that is Westeros, and you know, you will see sometimes, you know, in the next episode, in the fight sequence, you know, hard sunlight and immediately lots of cloud cover, and that's just the way that it goes, you know. And people are just going to have to sort of forgive us a little bit for our unpolishedness, and you know, there are mistakes in there, but I think, you know, Dunk has a lot of mistakes, and we just said, you know, we're going to be okay with this because everybody's going to get the point.
rougher on the edge.
Yes, yes, very good.
Was there a favorite sequence that, like, you were just blown away by on the day, or something that really stood out to you as like a highlight of the season?
There's an Egg-Maekar scene in the final episode that is very touching. You know, I'm sort of a young father. My kids are, you know, like 3 and 1, and it's even though Maekar is quite a crunchy human being, you know, there was this very small, almost, you know, tacit moment of between them that you just understood so much without saying anything. I think that was my favorite. Also, Dexter's a brilliant actor. Just watching him come into himself in that scene was just, yeah, it was fantastic.
One more question.
So, I know things never go as planned when you're filming. Was there an unexpected challenge you were kind of like, oh, like, I didn't think this was going to happen during this season?
Yeah, you mean like every day? Yeah. Which part of the day? In the what are the? Geez, there's got to be some funny ones that I don't have a good story for right now because it's all a big. There's something in my head. Look, the not being able to get cars through because of the mud and just literally trying to get actors down to set, you know, is something that, like, the road is washed out. Was always a fun one. And, you know, we had the greatest grounds team in the history of grounds team, you know, somehow keeping this water at bay that just seemed like it just wanted to form a little river, lake, actually, probably, in the middle of everything that we were trying to shoot. No, look, we had a combative spirit on this show where everybody got up every day knowing that this is going to be the hardest fucking day of shooting, you're ever going to have in your whole life. And they did it over and over and over and over again. That Belfast crew has a lot of institutional memory because of the original one. The same crew that shot Battle of the Bastards was with us, and I think we almost killed them. So, I don't know what that says about it, but it's, we pushed. It was hard. Every single day was, it was a feat to get done, and I don't know. Hopefully we got enough.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
It's really awesome. I can't wait for everybody to see.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thanks, guys.